Moin, ihr wunderbare Menschen des Interwebs. Ich begrüße euch ganz herzlich zurück zu meinem Let's Play von The Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. Wir sind bei der Aussage von Hosonaga stehen geblieben und hören uns einmal an, was er zu sagen hat. Forensic Medicine Primer. Pulling a blade from a wound without thinking could cause heavy bleeding. That's basic knowledge that any medical research assistant with an ounce of sense ought to know. In other words, there is no good reason why the defendant would have tried to pull the knife from the victim. Let's not forget that the young student did have a motive for killing the victim. The man the victim murdered 9 months ago, Dr. Wilson, was the defendant's highly respected mentor. Ja, genau das habe ich ja im letzten Part angesprochen, dass ich mir schon gedacht habe, dass genau das kommt. Wenn du nämlich ein Messer rausziehst, dann blutet die Wunde nur noch umso stärker. Also ist es eigentlich tatsächlich besser, das Messer drin stecken zu lassen. Aber jetzt ist natürlich die Frage, okay, ich bin mir sehr, sehr sicher, dass sie das dann wusste. Ja, ich meine, wenn sie eine Medical Assistant ist, sollte sie, zählt das ja schon fast als Basic Knowledge, würde ich jetzt einfach mal sagen, dann sollte sie das eigentlich wissen. Also müssen wir uns jetzt die Frage stellen, warum hat sie dann trotzdem das Messer rausgezogen? Is what you just said true, Inspector? Could pulling a knife from a wound really cause the wound to bleed heavily? Yes, think of the weapon itself as a stopper in the wound that prevents excessive blood loss. Until a doctor is ready to provide proper treatment, that stopper shouldn't be removed. Oh, I see. This is why yokels should stay on the farm. Even a quack from some obscure mountain village would have such basic knowledge. Anyone who's ever given someone a little poke with a knife and pulled it out again knows it. Oh, well, I've never stabbed anyone, you see, or pulled a blade out of a wound, so... Of course you haven't. I didn't bring you up to behave like a bandit. Father, is it true what they are telling me? Yes, it's basic remedial knowledge for medics. Ray would have been well aware of it. If she were to claim ignorance of such fundamentals, that would prove fatal in many ways. But then, why would Ray have done it? Could she have pulled out that knife in full knowledge that it would be fatal for Miss Pratt? I don't know. Ray never once mentioned anything about the knife to me. It seems almost impossible to believe, but... Would my friend actually have... Susato? Yes? Pull yourself together. We mustn't lose sight of why we are here. Counsel, it's time for your cross-examination. Oh, yes, Your Excellency. However, I must warn you that if your cross-examination fails to identify any issue with the established facts, I will be moving to my adjudication immediately afterwards. Oh my god, da hatte ich aber gerade einen heftigen Stroke. I understand. Believing in your clients and fighting for their cause until the bitter end. I knew it would be hard, but I had no idea it would be this hard. Okay, Cross-Examination. Jetzt ist natürlich die Frage, kann ich... Weil ich würde mir eigentlich sehr gerne den Stift anschauen und das kann ich nicht. Warum nicht? Warum kann ich den... Ich will den Stift untersuchen. Und ich weiß auch nicht, dieser Zeitungsartikel, der muss ja auch noch irgendwie wichtig sein. Aber ich weiß nicht, wie. Das Einzige, was mir jetzt auf Anhieb zu diesem Artikel einfällt, ist, dass hier anscheinend die Kamera kaputt gewesen sein muss. Also die Linse muss irgendwie einen Crack gehabt haben. Aber ansonsten kann ich es leider nicht lesen. Ich habe mich damals so sehr mit Japanisch auseinandergesetzt und auch Koreanisch. Und ich würde immer noch so gerne weiter diese Sprachen lernen, aber ich tue mir so hart. Und dann ist natürlich, Zeit ist natürlich auch noch ein Faktor. Die Zeit, die du dafür auch noch investieren musst, die du da reinstecken musst. Aber ich habe immer noch so viel Interesse an dieser Kultur und an den Sprachen an sich. Aber so jetzt auf Anhieb kann ich da leider nichts lesen. was dort steht. Gut, dadurch, dass ich jetzt keinen anderen Anhaltspunkt habe, würde ich sagen, wir befragen ihn einfach mal. Pulling a blade from a wound without thinking could cause heavy bleeding. Ich würde sagen, wir greifen einfach überall an. You say doing it without thinking could be a problem. Does that mean that if you used due care and attention, it would be alright? I wouldn't have thought this needed spelling out, really, but the blade is like a stopper in the wound. Remove it and a serious hemorrhage will occur. In other words, a medic would need to be present before any attempt was made to withdraw the blade. Doing it without thinking would be madness. You just can't do it. Oh, well, thank you for such a thoughtful explanation. You see, Counsel, when you act without thinking, the result is a bloodbath. Back to the witness testimony, please. Okay, that's basic knowledge that any medical research assistant with an odd sense ought to know. Brauche mich eigentlich schon gar nicht da anzugreifen. In that case, there's an obvious explanation here. Which is? Clearly, the defendant, Ray Nambani-san, does not possess an ounce of sense. Ich wusste, ich hätte dich angreifen sollen. What do you think about that, Professor Mikotoba? I'm not sure that you should be labeling your best friend as lacking in common sense. Well, I thought it would be better than labeling her as a murderer. I don't know, young people, do they? If that's friendship, I don't understand it. Careful, Counsel. A lack of common sense can be a very dangerous thing. Oh dear, that recoiled on me rather badly. That's life, I'm afraid. A lesson everyone must learn. Hopefully you can see now that this is really basic medical knowledge. Being involved in medical research, Nambani-san would certainly have been aware of it. But the defendant had suddenly encountered somebody she knew lying on the ground, bleeding to death. The sight could have shocked her delicate sensibilities, causing her to remove the blade inadvertently. I really don't think inadvertent actions can explain this. The woman is a medical research assistant. I can't imagine she would behave so irrationally. Oh, but irrational behavior is a woman's prerogative, isn't it? Oh dear, you have a lot to learn about women. Only a small-minded man could have such bigoted views. Oh dear, perhaps I'm letting my male persona take hold a little too much. Well, have I managed to convey the basics now? That should cover the medical side of the argument. Whatever the motive, it just isn't in Nambani-san's nature to do something so awful. But she had both motive and opportunity. That's very hard to argue against. But you don't know the defendant. And you, Counsel, do not appear to know the law. Yes, evidence is the only way to convince the court of your argument, not feelings. With this fletching to defend her, I would almost say I pity the accused. So do I. Inspector, you will reiterate your point about the defendant's motive, please. Yes, Miss Brett was in many ways the sworn enemy of Nambani-san. Well, yes, that's true. Dr. Wilson recognized Nambani-san's talent and offered her the position of assistant despite her being a woman. She was extremely grateful to him. Yes, the Englishman appears to have been a very broad-minded individual. Dr. Wilson had no time for outdated traditions. He met with opposition, of course, but he believed firmly in Nambani-san's abilities. Clearly, the defendant was in the man's debt, which only serves to prove my point. This is hopeless. I can't find a single crack in this testimony anywhere. If Ray knew that withdrawing the knife from the wound would threaten Miss Brett's life further, I just can't think of any way to explain why she did it. Susato, it's at times like these when it's especially important to remember the fundamentals. The fundamentals? Evidence is what counts in the courtroom, isn't it? Of course, but I've been through the court record dozens of times already. I think perhaps you're forgetting something though. You needn't take the evidence at face value. You can and must examine it in greater detail too. I realize this is your first time playing the role of a lawyer in the courtroom, so if you need reminding of the rudiments, you need only ask. I will do my very best to help. Examine the evidence in a court record. It's an idea, certainly. What should I do? I know what to do, I think. Come to think of it, Kazuma-sama and Naruhodo-san were always turning evidence over and over in their hands. Yes, I need to examine things in greater detail with space. Oh, by the look in your eyes, I see it's coming back to you. Go through the court record again and have a thorough look at everything. You may just find a clue. Yes, I will do it straight away. Okay, das heißt, wir können eventuell jetzt uns hier einmal besser angucken. Okay, jetzt können wir den Stift untersuchen. Hat sich jetzt hier was verändert? Hier hat sich jetzt ebenfalls etwas verändert. Dann gucken wir uns das jetzt alles gleich mal an. Und hier sehen wir jetzt auch, wie Susato in der normalen Uniform aussehen würde. Reckless England returns. Returnees tell all. This is the interview with you and Sasaki-san, isn't it, Father? It looks as though it was quite an exchange. Yes, he became a little over-animated when he was talking about his time in England. The photographer managed to capture the moment his hand carried chopped me on the neck. I do hope you weren't hurt. This is the newspaper from Sasaki-san. There seems to be an important article on the back page as well. Exclusive. Deadly poison stolen from Yume Medical Research Laboratory. From Yume's medical research? Father, isn't that your lab? What the? Let me see that. The poison been stolen? It's this morning's paper that Sasaki-san gave us. Are you saying you didn't know? As embarrassing as that is for the head of laboratory, I didn't. I've not heard any such thing. Where on earth could the reporter have gleaned this information? Come to think of it, there was no article mentioning this story in our paper this morning, was there? It's a highly toxic poison we've been working on in the strictest confidence. I've put Ray in charge of the project. Ray? She was managing it? If what's written here is true, it means that she tried to hide the theft from me. And moreover, the details were leaked somehow. I don't believe it. We need to read this article very carefully. Okay. Also spielt Gift wieder eine Rolle. Also bestünde doch die Möglichkeit, dass Gift auf der Klinge war, oder? So, dann als nächstes wird einmal der Stift unter die Lupe genommen. If we take off the pen's lid. Now let's unscrew the barrel, shall we? This must be the little reservoir that holds the ink. Yes, you fill it by drawing ink from a bottle up through the nip. Is something wrong, Father? Just that there doesn't actually appear to be any ink in there, that's all. Oh yes, you're right. It's pretty much empty. Well, it could be on the verge of running out, I suppose. Okay. There's some sort of emblem here, look. But it isn't a Yumi University one. It must belong to some other organization, I suppose, a business of some kind. But that would seem to imply that the pen doesn't in fact belong to Ray. Okay. The RM initials are very clearly engraved here. And the fact that Miss Brett was clinging to this pen in her dying moments is very clearly a message too. To identify her killer, you mean? I don't think there can be any doubt that this is a key piece of evidence in this case. Okay, also ich gehe mal stark davon aus, dass in diesem Füller hier Gift war. Das ist jetzt zumindest mal meine Vermutung. Okay, jetzt ist nur die Frage, wie bringen wir das alles zusammen? Also, wir haben jetzt ein Artikel über das Gift und wir haben den Stift, der eben noch ein wenig Liquid übrig hat. Okay. Also, pulling a blade from a wound, das ist nicht so wichtig. That's the basic, das ist auch nicht so wichtig. In other words, there is no good reason why the defendant would have tried to pull the knife from the victim. So, und jetzt hier frage ich mich, ob das Sinn machen würde, den Artikel vorzuzeigen. Weil... Jetzt hab ich mich falsch gedrückt. Ich wollte präsentieren. Jetzt sollte ich anfangen, die Shortcuts zu benutzen. Und nicht mehr alles mit der Maus zu machen. So. Also, wunderbar. Dann müssen wir nochmal kurz zurückgehen. In other words, there's no good reason. So, und jetzt hier würde ich einfach mal den Artikel vorzeigen. Now, there is one possibility, one very good reason why the defendant might have decided to withdraw the knife from the victim's wound. What? The jackal not only has a poor grasp of the law, but is also a poor loser. Tell us then, what possibility do you think you have identified? It's here, in this newspaper article, an article about a deadly poison having been stolen from a laboratory at the Imperial Uni. The victim perished from a stab wound. Poison has no relevance in this case. But... Prosecutor, you will let the defense speak. But a newspaper article, the court cannot rely on the kind of heresy those wretched publications carry. Counsel for the defense. I am going to need some tangible basis for your claim. You will indicate to the court precisely what part of the newspaper article mentioned affirms your assertion. Your Excellency. Yes, of course. Thank you. They would never have done something to further endanger Miss Brett's life without just cause. The reason why the defendant pulled the knife from the victim's body is explained in the article where it says... Poison stolen from... Okay, the reason why they pulled the knife. Poison stolen from laboratory. Deadly in tiny quantities. Why is the poison being developed? Ich glaube deadly in tiny quantities. The article reveals the following property about the poison in question. When the toxin enters the body on a knife laced with the poison, it's rapidly absorbed and causes death in minutes. Are you suggesting? If the knife used to attack Miss Brett was laced with this very poison, it would explain why the defendant, Membani-san, would have withdrawn the blade as soon as possible. Yes, the truth is... It was an attempt to stop the poison from entering the victim's body. This is complete and utter nonsense. Not at all. The defendant withdrew the knife blade from the victim's body not to accelerate the woman's demise, but to save her life, and the prosecution cannot deny the possibility. Have you not read the post-mortem report? The cause of death was hemorrhage. The word poison appears nowhere in the document. Well, that's because by acting quickly to remove the blade, the defendant prevented the poison from taking hold. Oh please, this is clearly desperation. The weasel's last breaking of wind. Poison has nothing whatsoever to do with this case, as I believe the defense is well aware. We have no proof that the information in this wretched newspaper article is at all reliable anyway. In that situation, what the student should have done is wait for medical assistance to arrive. But instead, you claim she suspected poisoning and took the potential lethal decision to remove the blade. She must have had a strong reason for her suspicions then, or the argument makes no sense. Exactly, well put, Inspector. On what grounds did she do it, Why did Ray suspect the stolen poison was involved? If you want grounds, I will give you grounds. What? You can't possibly... From your expression, counsel, it would appear those are not empty words. But naturally, as you stand in this courtroom as a lawyer, you must be aware that words alone, empty or not, are of no value in our modern justice system. The court demands evidence. Ah ja, modern justice system. Ja, aus der Steinzeit. Yes, Your Excellency, I'm well aware of that. I have seen it many times. From my place at his side in the Old Bailey. In that case, counsel, you will present the proof to the court now. What evidence demonstrates a clear link between this case and the poison in the newspaper article? Okay, so jetzt müssen wir das... Moment, wir gehen das jetzt nochmal durch. Single deep stab wound from behind, piercing a lung and resulting in a fatal hemorrhage. Death would have occurred within minutes. Notes. Extreme noises. Pupil constriction was observed in the victim in both eyes. Okay. Poison article. Exclusive. Deadly poison stolen from human medical research. Following a lecture at Yume-based Saseki Natsume, has come to light that a very disturbing incident took place. Deadly poison being secretly developed in the university's forensic science laboratory was stolen. Even the smallest amount entering the body, either via the mouth or via a wound from a poison-laced blade, would prove fatal in minutes. Current methods cannot detect the newly developed medical. The university would have to be consulted. Onset of symptoms occur in minutes, starting with impaired breathing and ending with acute contractions of the pupils prior to death. Such symptoms would be suggestive of this toxin. It's apparently an entirely new synthesis of alkaloids and rumored to have been commissioned by the military. Okay, das heißt, in dem Autopsiebericht gibt es Hinweise darauf, dass sie hätte vergiftet werden können. Oder? I would ask the court to refer to the notes section of the postmortem report, which reads, extreme meiosis, pupil constriction was observed in the victim. Clearly, being a joker with no knowledge of forensic science, I have no idea, so please do tell me. Presumably, the fact that this condition of the victim was noted in the postmortem report means that it's an unusual symptom of death. Well, under normal circumstances, the pupils dilate when someone dies. If there was extreme constriction instead, that's most certainly unusual, yes. What are you doing, you detective? In the newspaper article, there's the following information about the stolen poison. Onset of symptoms occurs in minutes, ending with acute contraction of the pupils prior to death. What? If the defendant, upon seeing the victim stabbed in the back, happened to notice that the pupils of Miss Brett's eyes had constricted severely, yes, as a medical research assistant, she would have suspected poison immediately, without doubt. Prosecutor, I think you will agree. This is very compelling evidence. You... I believe the defense has expertly demonstrated a credible reason for the defendant's actions. Yuishin Mikotoba. Yes, Your Excellency. I believe you're best placed here to confirm or deny the veracity of the defense counsel's argument. You will tell the court the truth. You will tell the court the truth about the details reported in this newspaper, please. It pains me to have to admit it, but I'm afraid I don't know. You don't know. The toxin was kept under lock and key in my laboratory, certainly, but I was unaware of any theft. Do you mean to tell the court that the reports of this theft are unfounded? No, Your Excellency. Without returning to the laboratory to investigate myself, I couldn't say. Listen to the bumbling academic, unaware of the theft of secret state research from his own workplace until he reads of it in the newspaper. I take full responsibility for the incompetence of my subversion. Subversion? A pitiful situation for a university professor. You should have more control over your students, rather than allowing them off on killing sprees. That's total unfounded. None of this is Professor Mikatoba's fault. It's all my fault. Ray. Mambani-san, you stand accused here. Outbursts like this will not be tolerated. But it was me. Ich muss ja sagen, Susekis Pose ist sehr... Ich weiß nicht, ob er jetzt gerade so richtig, als würde er gerade auf dem Klo sitzen irgendwie. I was the one who noticed that the poison we were developing had been stolen that day. What? So you knew. I'd been placed in charge of overseeing the project. It was the day that the professor and Saseki-san were interviewed together for the newspaper. That's when I noticed that some of the poison was missing. Just a tiny amount it was. Why didn't you let me know? Why didn't you let me know immediately? I was scared. The whole project was supposed to be confidential, but some of the toxin had somehow been taken. So I decided I would try to get it back before anyone else found out. Because I had a very good idea who the thief was. The thief? You don't mean... Yes, of course, it was the dainty Englishwoman. Miss Chazille Brad. That's why I decided to join the little group of people going to the seaside. Inside the beach hut, I confronted Miss Brad. But she just sat on a stool at the back of the hut, smiling sweetly at me as if she knew she was untouchable. No, it was you who stole the poison. Well now, whatever do you mean? And then, she suddenly got to her feet, before falling to her knees in front of me and then collapsing on the floor. That's when I saw the knife in her back. I couldn't understand what had just happened, and then, a moment later, I was seized with fear. The pupils of her eyes they'd shrunk on to tiny pinpoints. I don't believe it. In other words, you realized that the victim was suffering the effects of the stolen poison. My mind started racing. I hadn't seen anything pass Miss Brad's lips whilst I'd been with her, which left only one possible way for the poison to have entered her body. On the blade of the knife in her back. And the train of thought was what spurred you to withdraw the blade. Yes, if the amount that had entered her bloodstream was small enough, she might still have a chance. Bloodstream. That's what I hoped. Really, I am so sorry for staying silent all this time. Your attempt to hide the truth of what happened is something that can be overlooked. However, I have duly noted the courage with which you confessed in the end. Thank you, Your Excellency. It's barely perceptible, but I do think the balance has shifted a little here in this courtroom now. The victim just collapsed before your eyes, you say? Well, Mambani-san, if that is the case, perhaps you could explain how Miss Brad came to be stabbed. Well, you have no answer because the simple truth is that you stabbed the victim motivated by revenge. But you have no conclusive evidence to prove that assertion, do you? Oh, I have evidence, and it is very much conclusive. What's the prosecution counsel up to? It was brief, but he hesitated for a moment there. I'm almost sure of it. You will produce the aforementioned evidence at once, prosecutor. Perhaps some praises to a young student. What? I had I had imagined there would be no need for me to summon this evidence. But you've brought this on yourself. What the... Could a more damning shot exist? The cruelty in the air on that beach is almost palpable. This evidence, more than any other, reveals the true extent of the accused's murderous nature, for it shows the precise moment that Membani-san plunged her dagger into the victim's back. No, that's not true. I don't believe it. Das Bild hat aber den gleichen Crack wie das Bild von dem Artikel von Soseki-san. Counsel for the defense, was it you who was responsible for that shrill scream that just pierced my courtroom? Perhaps his voice has yet to break. I will show you who's slow to mature. Careful now, Susato is starting to show her face here. It is often said that a picture is worth 1,000 words, and here we have ample proof. The court will accept this extremely cogent photographic print as evidence. I can't believe he's had a photograph like that up his sleeve the entire time. It's such a stark image. I'm genuinely lost for words. Wait a minute, I don't understand. How did you... I mean, who took that photograph? Hey. That's of no importance here. Stop trying to divert attention. That's an absurd thing to say. It's crucially important. Whoever took this photographic print was a witness to Miss Brett's death. The court must be allowed to hear this person's testimony. I will uphold the defense demand. The prosecution will reveal the identity of the person responsible for taking this photograph at once. Well, I'm afraid I can't do that. Pardon? You see, this print arrived at the Imperial Police Bureau headquarters by express post yesterday, but there was nothing to indicate the sender's name or address. The provenance of the print is unknown. Goodness. Are we to understand then, counsel, that in full knowledge of the fact that this photograph has the murkiest of origins, you nevertheless believe it fit for submission as evidence in the Supreme Court? When you first produced the print before, I noticed that you hesitated for a brief moment because you knew that it wasn't completely reliable evidence, didn't you? Silence. What matters is the blatant truth that this print so eloquently expresses. But the defendant has already admitted to pulling the blade from the wound. Clearly, this isn't the moment that the knife was plunged into the victim's back, but the moment it was withdrawn. Don't waste this court's time with your ramblings. Indeed, without knowledge of who produced this print, we have no means of verifying the claim, and the scene it captures is without doubt the most compelling evidence presented to the court. If the defense is unable to shed any further light on the matter, I believe the conclusion is clear. Susato, this is the time for you to fight. If what you've established so far is true, then there can be no doubt. This photograph shows the moment that Ray withdrew the blade from the victim. Yes, we just need to prove that somehow. You will have plenty of time to rue your defeat on the slow train back to the provinces, and to rue the day you came up against Taketsushi at a court of law. If I can determine who took this photograph, then the trial is going to come to an end. There must be a clue somewhere. There must be some way of working out who took it. Well, counsel. Your Excellency, the burning question is who took that photograph, and the truth is... Wir haben eine Antwort darauf. This isn't about whether I can or can't come up with the answer now. I simply have to. Gesprochen wie Naruhodo. The identity of the person who took this dramatic photographic print is, I assure you, something the defense can and will reveal. You can't possibly, but as you so boldly claim that you can, please do enlighten us. Unfortunately, I'm unable to present a name. How utterly underwhelming. Did you really believe you could? However, I am able to present evidence. The defense has a piece of evidence that reveals important details about the photographer's identity. Very well then, counsel. Present your proof to the court. Which piece of evidence do you claim revealed something about the identity of the mystery photographer? Der Artikel von Suzuki Natsuma. What is that? The newspaper again? It's not the headline that's relevant here, Your Excellency. It's the photograph. If you look at it closely, you will notice that there are some white lines on the right-hand side. Oh, yes, indeed. They had already caught my eye as it happens. What of it? A shadow of some kind, presumably from the branches of a tree or the like. There are no trees growing inside my laboratory at the university, I can assure you. Now, if you look closely at this photograph... Good gracious! Yes, exactly the same pattern of lines is present on this photograph too. Well... That tells us nothing. Yes, it's a shadow of some kind, definitely, from the branches of a tree. There wouldn't be any trees growing inside a hut at the beach, counsel. What's quite remarkable about this is that the two patterns are absolutely identical. How could such an extraordinary similarity have transpired? The curious matching pattern that appears on both photographic prints is a result of the photographer's technique, a camera defect, some tree branches. Obviously, it must be due to a problem with the camera used to take the photographs. With the photographic device? Yes, we can confidently say that the camera's lens must be scratched, and that the scratched lens causes unwanted lines to appear on every print taken with the device. In short, the two photographs under consideration here were taken with the same camera. There must be hundreds of such camera devices here in the capital. It would be utterly impossible to identify the owner of this particular one. I think you're forgetting, prosecutor, that one of the photographs featured in a newspaper article. A newspaper? That's right. The author of that article is the mystery witness to this crime. I see why you were called the Recious England attorney. What are you yelling about? You've already testified. It's many memo, I tell you. Many memo. Me mo. Soseki-san, what was that? Did you say many memo? Ever since I returned to Japan, a reporter from the Shui News has been haunting me, following my every move. A reporter by the name of Raiten Many Memo. Yes, haunting me from dawn till dusk. Now that he mentions it... Could that same reporter be... A camera to the left of him, a notebook to the right. There I am, stuck in the middle with... Raiten Many Memo. So you're saying that this picture was taken by him? Yes, my lord, your excellency. Officer, find this newspaper reporter at once and bring him to my courtroom. We will adjourn for a short recess in the meantime. Yes, your excellency. As you say, your excellency. And one more thing. I want this knife, the murder weapon, examined for traces of poison. You will solicit the assistance of the Imperial University's medical department for the task. Understood? Mini Memo. To be continued. Okay, dann werden wir vermutlich im nächsten Part den Reporter einmal befragen dürfen. Und da bin ich ja gespannt, was er gesehen hat. Ob er jetzt wirklich nur diesen einen Moment gesehen hat und dann eben davon Foto gemacht hat. Ob er da vielleicht sogar noch tiefer mit drin steckt oder was da noch so alles ans Licht kommt. Bin ich sehr gespannt, wie das dann weitergeht. Hier gibt es jetzt aber erstmal einen Cut. Ich bedanke mich ganz herzlich fürs Zusehen. Hoffe, ihr hattet Spaß. Und wenn ihr mögt, sehen wir uns sehr, sehr gerne im nächsten Part wieder. Bis dahin, ciao.